Welcome back to my nearly 100,000 incredible students. So good to see you guys again. In today's video, we have a really fun and interesting lesson planned. We are going to learn English with a short story. Yeah, this is a deep work lesson, so get your PDFs ready if you are a channel member, and make sure you watch all the way through to get the most out of this video. Now, here's the plan for today. First, we'll have a quick read of the story, which will just take a couple of minutes. I will read it quickly to you the first time. Then we will have a vocabulary breakdown, taking a closer look at some of the more difficult, some of the more challenging language that we saw in the story. In part 3, we will go back to the story for a deep dive, going line by line by line to really squeeze every last drop of educational juice that we can out of the story. In other words, to get the most out of the story. And then finally, in part 4, we will have a discussion question to respond to out loud in order to practice our speaking skills. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie A Beautiful Mind. A Beautiful Mind, starring Russell Crowe. A great movie, a fantastic movie. Well, the story that we're going to read today was the inspiration for that movie. The inspiration behind that movie, we could also say. So let's take a look. Have you ever felt like your mind was playing tricks on you? This is the story of John Nash, a genius mathematician who, while changing the world with his ideas, found himself battling terrifying hallucinations and voices that weren't real. John Nash's mind worked in brilliant, groundbreaking ways. He developed new theories in math that helped explain how people make decisions, especially in complex situations. But here's the tricky part. As his fame grew, so did the strange and frightening thoughts in his head. Nash became convinced that he was part of a secret government conspiracy. He thought people were following him, and he believed he had to crack hidden codes to save the country. Of course, none of this was real. The illness took a toll on his relationships, his work, and his life. At one point, Nash was so paranoid that he stopped trusting his colleagues and even his own wife. He'd spend hours scribbling on chalkboards, trying to solve problems that didn't exist, all while hearing voices and seeing people who weren't really there. The world around him became a mix of reality and fantasy, and it was tearing him apart. Nash had to come to terms with his illness before he could return to his life and his work. With support and treatment, he found a way to manage his condition. At the end of the day, Nash was able to focus on his math again and even won the Nobel Prize for his incredible contributions to game theory. But his story shows that the line between genius and madness can sometimes be razor thin. All right, awesome work, guys. Yeah, that was a brief look at the story, a quick read of the story. If there was some language in there that felt difficult or, too hard, don't worry, because for the rest of this video, we are going to dissect this story and really pick it apart, really closely examine all of the language in the story to make sure that we understand everything crystal clear. We're going to begin that process with our vocabulary breakdown, and we're going to begin the vocabulary breakdown with this idiom here: come to terms with. If you come to terms with something, what does that mean? It means you accept and deal with something, but not just anything, something difficult, something that's hard to process, hard to deal with, maybe hard to accept, right? So maybe some synonyms or similar words, similar ideas, similar ways of expressing this idea in English could be accept. If you accept something, then you say, okay, I'm okay with this, right? If you face something, maybe you've been avoiding something for a long time, right? But in the end, you decide to face it. We could also say face it head on. To face it directly is to face it head on, right? We could also say you handle a problem. You handle a difficult situation. So those are all kind of similar ways of expressing this idea. Now, what about on the other side? What's the opposite of come to terms with? We could say to avoid something, deny something, ignore something. So let's take a look at this orange sentence. It's a sentence from our story today. John Nash had to come to terms with his illness before he could return to work. Okay, yeah, he had to come to terms with his illness before he could return to work. So his illness, right? He is suffering from these hallucinations. He's hearing things that aren't real. He's seeing things that aren't real. He is having hallucinations, right? And he needs to deal with this difficult situation before he can return to work, before he can go back to work. So we need to say that he had to come to terms with his illness, okay? He needed to figure out his illness. He needed to face his illness, handle his illness. Accept might not be a good word to use here, because if you accept something, then that kind of implies that you're not going to change it, right? Now, obviously, he can't go back to work if he's hearing things and seeing things. It's going to interfere with his work, right? So what he needs to do is come to terms with it in a more direct way. He needs to really handle it, face it, deal with it. Now, here's a green sentence, and this is unrelated to our story. It has nothing to do with the story of John Nash. Okay, let's take a look at this. She finally came to terms with her new responsibilities. So let's just pretend that this woman has had a child, right? She has a new baby. And at first, she's really not happy about all of the work that comes along with this, right? There's a lot of new work that she needs to do. She needs to take care of this baby, and it's taking up a lot of her time, right? So at first, let's say that she struggles with this. We could also say that she grapples with this. She struggles with this, right? She's kind of having a hard time with this situation. It's very difficult for her because the workload has increased a lot, right? She's got a job, she's got all of these responsibilities with work, and now she has new responsibilities taking care of this baby. So after some time, however, she comes to terms with the situation. Yeah, she accepts the situation, right? She handles the situation. If you face a situation that's a little more direct, right? Like maybe she makes a decision. Okay, I'm going to step up and I'm going to face these new responsibilities head on. Yeah, face makes me think of take control of a situation. So maybe if she faces this situation, she takes control of it. I'm going to draw a little picture down here at the bottom because you guys know that I love to doodle. I love to draw pictures to help us understand vocabulary. I'm a very visual learner myself, meaning that I learn with pictures and images, right? So I'm going to draw a picture here. And a funny picture, we have a guy here, and this guy is losing his hair. Okay, see this? He's going bald. His hair is falling out. Now, at first, he is really stressed out about this situation. He's really stressed about losing his hair. He thinks to himself, oh my God, like, what am I gonna do? My life is over, right? He's really bothered, really upset by this situation. But in the end, he comes to terms with it. Maybe he finds some acceptance and it doesn't bother him anymore, right? So in the end, he comes to terms with it. He accepts it. Yeah, I would say that come to terms with is a little more like accepting something and a little less like handling something or facing something. It's a little bit more passive, right? So this guy comes to terms with his situation. Maybe he even grows a big beard, and that makes him feel better, right? Just to give you one more example, because I want this to be very clear how to use this expression, I have a weird situation with my shoulders. Whenever I move my shoulders, they crack, they pop, and this has been going on for years. I move my shoulder, it cracks, right? Now, at first, I was really upset about this. And, I even went to doctors. I had x-rays done. I did stretching. I did exercises to try and figure out what on earth is going on with my shoulders, right? Nothing worked. So in the end, I had to come to terms with my weird shoulder situation. I had to accept it, right? How about you? Has there been a situation in your life that maybe you struggled against initially? In other words, at first, you weren't okay with it. It bothered you at first, but in the end, you came to terms with it. You can let me know down in the comments section. Another fantastic word that we saw in this story I want to talk about is groundbreaking. Groundbreaking, an adjective, it means something very new and important that has never been done before. So it's breaking new ground. It's groundbreaking. We could also say innovative. We could also say original, like a fresh idea. We could say a fresh concept, a fresh idea, a new idea. Here's probably the closest synonym: pioneering. Yeah, if an idea is a pioneering idea, that means it's going places that other ideas have not gone before. Some antonyms or opposite words might be commonplace, right? Like ordinary, little spelling mistake, ordinary, like unimportant, right? So in the story we saw, Nash's work in game theory was considered groundbreaking. Okay, so what is game theory? Remember that John Nash was this brilliant mathematician. In other words, he was really smart, really intelligent when it came to math, right? And game theory is all about how people make decisions, predicting how they will make certain decisions, why they will make certain decisions, right? And calculating those decisions. So that was his field. We could also say his field of expertise, the area in which he was best, his area of work, his area of study. We could also say his field of study, right? So his ideas and his work in this field were really groundbreaking. His ideas were fresh, original, innovative, pioneering. He was going places where no one had gone before, right? New places. Here's an unrelated example. The scientists made a groundbreaking discovery in medicine. Okay, if you make a groundbreaking discovery, what does that mean? A groundbreaking discovery. You discover something totally new. You discover something totally fresh, totally unseen before, right? It's brand new. So down here, I'm going to draw a picture of Steve Jobs, okay? A really bad picture of Steve Jobs. Let's see, he was bald, right? And he had a beard, just like the guy in our last drawing. And I'm going to draw, let's see, he had some glasses, Steve Jobs holding up the iPhone, okay? Remember when the iPhone first came out? Remember when the iPhone was first released, the iPhone 1, the first iPhone? It was really groundbreaking. That kind of technology was totally new, totally fresh. The idea behind the iPhone was really innovative and original and pioneering. It was not unimportant. It was not ordinary. It was not commonplace. It was fresh and new and groundbreaking. Up next, we've got take a toll on. Take a toll on. Yeah, if something takes a toll on someone, then it causes harm or damage over time. So yeah, we can say something is affecting you, something is damaging you, something is harming you. And the key here is over time. If something takes a toll on you, then it wears you down. Or we could also say wears away at you, right? It wears away at you. It wears you down. Maybe we could say it breaks you down. It breaks you down over time. This is not something that just happens overnight, right? This is something that takes a long time. So some antonyms could be to improve your situation, to benefit you, to help you. This is the opposite, right? Take a toll on someone is the opposite of all these things, the opposite. So the illness took a toll on Nash's life and work. Yeah, his illness, his mental illness, all of his hallucinations and paranoid hallucinations, this mental illness, it took a toll on Nash's life and his work over time. Here's an unrelated example. Working long hours can take a toll on your health. Yeah, you know, if you work long hours for one day, maybe there's one day where you work 15 hours, you're going to be tired. You're going to be exhausted. You're going to be wiped out. But you can get a good night's sleep and recover from that, right? However, if you do that every day for 10 years, it's going to take a toll on you. It's going to take a toll on your health. It's going to wear away at you. It's going to wear you down. It's going to break you down. You know what this reminds me of? When President Obama first took office, right? He looked young. He looked healthy. He had black hair, right? His skin looked good. He looked like he was full of energy, full of life. If you look at the before and after pictures of Obama before he took office and then after he left office, there's a huge difference. There's a really big difference, right? You can see that the responsibilities of being president, the stress of being president really took a toll on his health. Now that the vocabulary breakdown is finished and out of the way, and we are returning to the story for a deep dive, I want to remind you guys that my videos here on YouTube will always be free, but I really appreciate your support. Every time you like one of my videos, every time you leave me a comment, every time you watch a video all the way through or share it with a friend or become a channel member for only $5 a month, these things really, really support a small YouTuber like me, and they make it possible for me to continue with my work. So if you have decided to hire me as your YouTube English teacher, I thank you so much for doing that. Thank you guys for your support. All right, let's dive in with the deep dive of the story. The story behind A Beautiful Mind. Have you ever felt like your mind was playing tricks on you? Another interesting expression here, playing tricks on you. You know, when I was a little kid and I would go to sleep at night, sometimes the shadows in my room would play tricks on me. I would see things that looked really scary, but they weren't actually there, right? My mind was playing tricks on me. Those things I thought I saw weren't real, right? So playing tricks on you. This is the story of John Nash, a genius mathematician, so a really smart, really intelligent, deeply intelligent mathematician, someone who practices math, who does that professionally, right? Who, while changing the world with his ideas, found himself battling terrifying hallucinations and voices that weren't real. Yeah, he was battling, struggling against these terrifying visions and voices. We could also say visions, right? Like a vision, you see something that isn't really there. And all of this is, of course, really scary, right? Really terrifying, really horrifying. If it's really scary, we could say horrifying. John Nash's mind worked in brilliant and groundbreaking ways. Okay, so he's really smart. The way that his mind works, the way that his brain sees the world and processes the world and deals with the world is really brilliant. Yeah, the way that it works is brilliant, and it also works in groundbreaking ways. His brain can do things that no brain has been able to do before. No mind before his mind was able to do the things that his mind can do, right? He developed new theories. Theory is like an idea, a hypothesis, right? He developed new theories in math that helped explain how people make decisions. Game theory, right? Especially in complex situations. A guy goes to the beach and he sees a sign that says, "No swimming. There are sharks in the water." Is he going to go swimming? Of course not, right? That's not a complex situation. That's a simple situation. We could also say a no-brainer. A no-brainer. Say, that's a no-brainer. Don't go swimming in the water with sharks. Are you crazy? That's a no-brainer. The situations we're dealing with here are not no-brainer situations. These are complicated situations, really tricky situations where the correct answer, the right decision, is not always so obvious, not always so clear. So that is John Nash's field of work. But here's the tricky part. The tricky part. Here's the part of the story where things get tricky, where the situation gets messy, right? It gets a little bit complex. As his fame grew, so he's getting more popular, so did the strange and frightening thoughts in his head. So his fame is going up. He's becoming more and more famous, more and more popular, right? More and more people are learning about him, hearing about him and his work at the same time. The frightening, the strange thoughts and ideas in his head, those things are increasing as well, right? So these things are hand in hand. They are growing hand in hand. Now, Nash became convinced that he was part of a secret government conspiracy. Ooh, this is a pretty difficult sentence here, right? So our main character, John Nash, he became convinced. He became certain. His mind was made up. He was sure. He was confident. Confident of what? Confident that he was part of a secret government conspiracy. A conspiracy, we could also say like a secret plot, a secret scheme, a scheme, right? A plan, a secret plan. He thought the government was secretly conspiring against him. Now, of course, this was all part of his mental illness, right? He thought people were following him. Were they really following him? No. He believed he had to crack hidden codes to save the country. Poor John Nash, right? He was very troubled. He was a very, a deeply troubled man. These ideas in his head, these paranoid thoughts, none of this was true. None of this was real. The more he thought about these ideas, the more convinced he became of them, the more certain he became that they were real, the more sure he became that they were true, right? Now, of course, none of this was real. So not overnight, not in a short period of time, but over time, the illness took a toll on his relationships. So in other words, it strained, put stress on his relationships, also on his work, and also just generally on his life. At one point, Nash was so paranoid, he was so sucked into these paranoid thoughts and these paranoid ideas that he stopped trusting his colleagues, the people he worked with, right? He even stopped trusting his own wife. He thought everyone was conspiring against him. In other words, working against him, trying to trick him, trying to cheat him, right? He would spend hours scribbling on chalkboards, trying to solve problems that didn't even exist. All the while, he was hearing voices and seeing people who weren't really there. Super sad situation, right? The world around him became a mix. We could also say a mixture, a combination, okay, of reality and fantasy. Reality, what is true, fantasy, what is not true, okay? And it was tearing him apart. So, in other words, his reality, his way of seeing the world and what he thinks is real, what he thinks is true, it becomes very muddled. In other words, unclear. In other words, he can't tell what is true. He can't tell what is not true. He can't discern reality from fantasy. Nash had to come to terms with his illness before he could return to his life and to his work. With support and with treatment, he found a way to manage his condition. So he took action, right? He took action. He knew he needed to come to terms with his illness. He knew he needed to figure this out. So what did he do? He got support, from his friends and his family, from his wife, from his colleagues, and he got professional help. He got treatment, and he found a way to manage this condition, to make it work, to deal with it. In other words, we could say, keep it in check. Keep it in check. Keep it manageable. At the end of the day, Nash was able to focus on, in other words, give his attention to his math once again. And this is incredible. He even won the Nobel Prize for his incredible or amazing contributions to game theory. What are contributions? That was the work that he did, all of his successes, all of his breakthroughs, all of the progress he made in the field of game theory. But his story, it shows us that this line between genius and madness. So here's madness, or being insane, right? Insanity, being crazy over here. And here's genius, being intelligent, being smart over here. The line between those things is not always so clear. Sometimes the line can be razor thin. Ooh, what does that mean? This line can be as thin as a razor. that you use to shave with, right? In other words, sometimes it can be hard to tell these things apart, to differentiate. There's a big $10 word for you, to differentiate between the two. In other words, to tell them apart. If you guys are still with me, take your hand, give yourself a pat on the back because you're doing fantastic. You made it through the quick read and the vocab breakdown and then the deep dive into the story. Fantastic job, guys. Let's have a little cool down speaking practice session now. I've got a question here, and this question is going to help us think more deeply about this story and also, more importantly, draw a connection. Here's the story, here's you. It's going to draw a connection between the story and you. Yeah, we're going to create a personal connection here because that really is a fantastic way of internalizing all of the information that we've taken in today. Because if you've seen my video on how to remember vocabulary best, making a personal connection is really important. So what we're going to do is just respond to this question here, and I'm going to ask you guys to push yourselves, to challenge yourselves to talk for a full minute, right? Yeah, let's really work out that spoken English muscle. Now, here's the question we're going to be taking a look at. Have you ever faced a challenge that took a toll on you, either physically, like your physical health, your body, or mentally, like your mind, right? So how did you handle it? How did you face this? How did you deal with this? How did you come to terms with this situation, right? Now, once again, I want you guys to speak for the full minute, but I'm going to go first and give you a demonstration of what I'd like you to try and do. Yeah, let me be honest with you guys. When I was younger, I really struggled with anxiety, and in particular, social anxiety, right? It was hard for me to talk to people, hard for me to get close to people, especially hard to make new friendships and to participate in social activities. It was hard to put myself out there. I was very afraid of people, and this took a big toll on my mental health, to be honest with you. So how did I handle this situation? Well, I started going to a group called Toastmasters in college. Toastmasters is all about helping people with public speaking, and this was a real game changer for me. In other words, this really changed my life. It really changed the game, and slowly I was able to make progress and build confidence in social situations. Okay, that's my personal connection. And now it's your turn. Push yourself. Talk for the full minute. Go ahead. As always, I want to give a shout out to my channel members. Thank you guys so much for your extra additional support of me. It really means a lot. And guys, if you are interested in becoming a channel member, click join here on YouTube. Go to patreon.com/EnglishWithConnor. You can get PDFs for my lessons. You can get hours of bonus material, bonus videos that are not available to the public. And even more importantly, you can make a commitment to yourself to take your English learning learning journey seriously. Additionally, you can support me as your YouTube English teacher. Now, today, if you are in the middle of a study session, keep going. Let's do another video. I'm going to put another one of my lessons up on the screen. Go click on it. I'll meet you there, and we will keep this party going.